You saw the headline, layoffs stacking up, company after company, and that quiet knot forming in your stomach when you wonder if your name is next on the list in 2026. I felt that exact knot. I ignored it for years. Here is what I learned the hard way. The people who walk through a wave of mass layoffs without losing their homes are almost never the ones with the safest jobs. They are the ones who quietly rebuilt their households the way our grandparents did, so that no single paycheck could ever knock them flat. I used to think that was old-fashioned nonsense. I was wrong, and it cost me. Stay with me, because there is a forgotten savings method invented by a small-town Pennsylvania banker in 1909 that made ordinary families almost impossible to break, even in the worst years this country ever saw. And none of this needs a big income or a fresh start. It works with the ordinary home and the ordinary bank account you already have tonight. I still remember standing in my kitchen the first Friday after I got walked out of my old office, holding a cardboard box of my own coffee mug and a stapler, staring at the calendar on the fridge and doing the math on how many weeks I could survive. It was not many. That number changed my life. Let me tell you how I got there and how I climbed back out. For most of my working life, I believed my job was my security. That was the whole plan. Show up, do good work, keep the boss happy, and the paycheck keeps coming. I treated that paycheck like it was the foundation of everything. But a paycheck is not a foundation. It is a rope somebody else is holding. I found that out on an ordinary Tuesday when a manager I had known for 6 years read me a script off a printed page and told me my position was eliminated. Not my performance. My position, 6 years of loyalty, gone in 4 minutes. And here's the part that shook me. I had done everything the modern way. I had a decent salary. I had a retirement account I never looked at. I had 2 credit cards for emergencies. On paper, I looked fine. In reality, I was about 5 weeks from real trouble. So I started digging into how people used to survive this. Not the wealthy, regular working families in the 1800s and early 1900s who lived through bank panics and depressions that make our worst headlines look gentle. And what I found stopped me cold. Back in the panic of 1893, and again in the Great Depression that started in 1929, unemployment in some American cities hit nearly 25%. 1 in 4 adults out of work. No unemployment checks like we have now. No safety net worth the name. And yet, millions of those households did not collapse. They stretched, they suffered, but they held on, because their homes were built to run on almost nothing when they had to. My grandparents' generation did not see a layoff as the end of the world. They saw it as a hard season. The difference was not their courage. The difference was their setup. Therefore, the real question was not, how do I find another job fast? The real question was, how did they build a household that a lost job could not destroy? And that is where the forgotten methods start. The first thing I discovered is that our great-grandparents kept something almost nobody keeps anymore, a household account book. I know how that sounds. Boring. Old-fashioned. A dusty little notebook where you write down what you spend. When I first read about it, I nearly skipped right past it. I already had a banking app that tracked my spending automatically, and I figured that was the modern, better version. It is not, and there is real proof. This practice was not just a quaint habit, it was taught as a serious skill. In 1899, a chemist named Ellen Swallow Richards helped launch what became the home economics movement at a series of meetings in Lake Placid, New York. Her whole mission was to treat running a household as a real science, with real numbers, real measurement, and real control. She believed a family that measured its money and its food could survive almost anything. And the households that listened to her proved her right through 2 world wars and a depression. The account book was the heart of it. Every cent that came in, every cent that went out, written by hand. Now here's why the hand part matters. And this is the part the modern app people never tell you. Researchers who study spending have found again and again that when you physically write down what you spend in your own handwriting, you spend noticeably less. The slow act of writing forces your brain to actually feel the money leaving. A number that flashes on a screen and disappears does not do that. It slides right past you. When I finally tried it, I did not believe it would matter. I grabbed a cheap spiral notebook the kind you buy for under $2, and for 1 month I wrote down every single thing I spent: the coffee, the gas, the little online orders I forgot about the second I clicked buy. By the end of that first month, I had written down over $200 of spending I could not even remember the reason for. $200 gone every month for years. That is thousands of dollars that could have been my buffer against exactly the layoff that blindsided me. Nobody stole that money from me at gunpoint. It leaked out a few dollars at a time in a way that was designed to be invisible. And that is when I started to understand who benefits from us forgetting the old ways. Because think about it, a family that writes down every expense, that feels every dollar, is a family that is very hard to sell to. They notice the subscription that renewed. They notice the price that crept up. They notice the little conveniences that add up to a car payment every month. The whole machine of modern spending runs on us not noticing automatic payments, one-click buying, tap to pay so fast your brain never registers the cost. Every one of those was sold to us as convenience. And convenience it is. But it is convenience that quietly strips away the exact awareness that used to keep households safe. Our grandparents were not smarter than us. They just had not yet been trained to stop paying attention. But knowing where my money leaked was only half the problem. Writing it down showed me the holes. It did not yet build the wall. And a wall is exactly what you need when the layoffs come. So the next forgotten method I went looking for was how ordinary families actually held cash back on small incomes without the discipline failing the first hard week. And the answer was almost insultingly simple. They physically separated their money. Long before banking apps, before even most families trusted banks at all, households used what many people now call the envelope method. You take your money and you divide it into separate envelopes, each one labeled for a purpose: rent, food, coal or fuel, and critically, one envelope that never gets touched, no matter what, the one for the hard season. When an envelope was empty, you were done spending in that category. Not almost done, done. There was no invisible overdraft, no credit card to quietly borrow against tomorrow. The limit was something you could see and hold. I want to stop here and talk to you directly, because I know some of you are thinking this does not apply to you. Maybe you already tried budgeting apps. Maybe you already downloaded the fancy software, linked all your accounts, and watched the colorful charts, and still ended up right where you started, watching the layoff headlines with that same knot in your stomach. I was you. I had the apps. They did not save me. So let me give you something you can do tonight, with nothing but what is already in your house. Take 3 ordinary envelopes, or 3 jars, or 3 coffee cans. It does not matter. On the first one, write the word living. On the second, write the word flex. On the third, write one word and make it big: buffer. For the next 2 weeks, when you get any money, put a small fixed amount into buffer first, before anything else. Even $10, even $5. Then handle your living costs from the first envelope and let your extras, the eating out, the small treats, come only from the flex envelope. When flex is empty, you stop until it refills. Here's the trick that makes it work when willpower fails. The buffer envelope has one rule written right on it. This is only opened the week I lose my income, not for a sale, not for a trip, not for a rough Friday, only for the day the paycheck stops. That one physical rule does something no app ever did for me. It turns saving from a vague good intention into a wall you can see growing week by week. I watched mine grow from a single folded bill into something that could actually carry my household for weeks. And the feeling of that was worth more than any raise I ever got. This costs you nothing. You already own everything you need to start. But separating the money only works if there is money left to separate. And when a layoff hits, the fastest way to make your buffer last twice as long is not on the income side at all. It is on the side almost everyone forgets. The side our grandparents were absolute masters of. The kitchen. Here is a number that stunned me when I found it. In the depths of the Great Depression, the average American family spent a huge share of its budget on food, and yet they ate. They ate because they had skills we traded away for convenience without even noticing the trade. During both World Wars, the government begged families to plant what they called victory gardens. By 1944, These home gardens in the United States were producing an astonishing amount of the nation's fresh vegetables. By some estimates, around 40% of it. 40% of the fresh produce in the entire country, grown in backyards and vacant lots and window boxes by ordinary people who were not farmers. Those same households canned, they preserved, they kept a real pantry, not a shelf with 3 cans on it. A working reserve of food that meant a lost paycheck did not instantly become a hungry week. And the crown jewel of this was something almost nobody has anymore. A root cellar, or even just a cool, dark corner of a basement where families stored potatoes, onions, carrots, apples, and squash that would keep for months without any electricity at all. A properly stored bag of potatoes can last through most of a winter. Onions and winter squash, the same. That is weeks of meals sitting quietly in a corner, costing nothing to keep. I was skeptical of this one too. I live in a normal house, not a farm, but I decided to test the smallest possible version of it. I spent about $30 building what our grandparents would have called a deep pantry. Dried beans, rice, oats, canned vegetables, and a paper sack of potatoes and onions kept in the coolest, darkest part of my house. Within a couple of months, without trying hard, I had a shelf that could feed me for 2 to 3 weeks with no shopping at all. And I noticed something I did not expect. Just knowing that food was there changed how I felt about the headlines. The panic loosened, because a layoff is only terrifying when it can reach your dinner table by Friday. Push that danger back by 3 weeks, and suddenly you can think clearly, negotiate from strength, and take the right next job instead of the first desperate one. This is the part that made me a little angry once I saw it clearly. If you want to go deeper on everything I just walked you through, I put the full system, the account book method, the envelope rules, the deep pantry blueprint, and the layoff club structure into a series of digital books called First Foundations, Deep Frugal, and Full Stack. They are built for ordinary households, not financial experts, and you can find the link in the description below. Everything I tested the hard way is written out step by step, so you do not have to learn it the way I did. We unbuilt all of that, and we called it progress. And the layoff headlines of 2026 are about to remind a lot of people what that trade really cost. We were taught that keeping a full pantry is hoarding, that growing food is a quaint hobby, that preserving your own vegetables is more trouble than it is worth when the store is right there. Every one of those messages pushed us toward buying small, buying often, and depending completely on a system that assumes your paycheck never stops. Our grandparents would have found that terrifying. They lived through the years that proved the paycheck can absolutely stop for 1 in 4 people, all at once. They built their homes so that when the money paused, life did not. But I promised you something specific at the start. A method invented by a small-town banker over 100 years ago that made ordinary families almost impossible to break. This is the one that changed everything for me, and I have never once heard it mentioned in all the modern money advice I was drowning in. Here is the story. The year was 1909. In the small town of Carlisle, Pennsylvania, the treasurer of the Carlisle Trust Company, a man named Merkel Landis, had an idea. He had watched too many working families reach the end of the year with nothing set aside, scrambling and going into debt every winter. These were not lazy people. They were people who simply could not hold on to money when it was sitting right there, easy to reach and easy to spend. So Landis created something he called a Christmas Savings Club. The idea was simple, almost too simple. A family agreed to deposit a tiny, fixed amount, sometimes just a few cents or a few dollars, on a regular schedule all year long. The money went into a special account they could not easily raid, and at the end of the year, the club paid it all back to them in one lump, right before the holidays. That first year, in 1909, hundreds of members joined and saved together a sum that was enormous for working families of that time. And the idea spread like wildfire. Within a couple of decades, millions of Americans belonged to Christmas savings clubs at banks all across the country. Here is the detail that stunned me most. When the banks began failing in the Great Depression, families who had money in these Christmas clubs were sometimes among the ones who came through with cash in hand, exactly when everyone else had nothing. Now think carefully about why this worked, because the genius of it is the whole secret. It was not about the amount. A few dollars at a time is almost nothing. It worked because it made saving automatic, invisible, and out of reach. The family never had to find the willpower each week. The deposit just happened, quietly, on schedule, and because the money was locked into the club, it could not be spent on a whim. By the time the lump came back, it felt like a gift from a stranger, even though the stranger was themselves, a year younger and a little wiser. That is the exact opposite of how we live now. Now our money is designed to be as reachable as possible. Tap, click, buy, instantly, from anywhere. And 100 years ago, the smartest thing a struggling family could do was put a wall between themselves and their own money so that a wall of savings could grow on the other side. When I understood that, I built my own version, and you can build yours this weekend. I set up a separate savings account, one at a different bank from my everyday account, so it would not stare at me every time I checked my balance. I gave it a name I could feel. I called it my Layoff Club. Then I set one small automatic transfer to move a fixed amount into it on the same day every week without me ever touching it. Small enough that I never missed it, steady enough that it added up. That is the whole method. A separate account, a name that means something, one automatic transfer, and a rule that the money is only for the day the income stops. It is the Christmas Club of 1909, rebuilt for today. And it does the one thing willpower alone could never do for me. It saves without me having to decide to save. Within months, that quiet account had grown into the very thing I did not have on that first terrible Friday with the cardboard box. A cushion. Weeks of breathing room. The single thing that turns a layoff from a catastrophe into an inconvenience. Merkel Landis figured that out in a small Pennsylvania town before most of our grandparents were even born. The knowledge was right there the whole time. It just got buried under 100 years of being told that convenience was the same thing as freedom. It is not. Convenience is the rope somebody else is holding. Freedom is the wall you build yourself. So here's what I want you to take away. More than any single tip. The layoffs coming in 2026 can take your job. They cannot take a household you have quietly built to stand without one. That power was never in the paycheck. It was always in the setup. And the setup is yours to build. Starting tonight with a notebook, 3 envelopes, a corner pantry, and one small automatic transfer into an account you name for the hard season. If you have ever felt that knot in your stomach reading the headlines, then you already know, deep down, that a job was never really security. You are the kind of person who would rather hold the rope yourself than trust someone else to never let go. That instinct is not paranoia. It is the same instinct that carried our grandparents through years far worse than these, and it was talked out of us on purpose. Because a household that cannot be shaken is a household that is very hard to sell to. Now I want to hear from you. Of everything I tested, which one are you going to start with? Is it the handwritten account book that showed me $200 lost a month? Or the Layoff Club account named after a banker from 1909? Tell me in the comments right now before you click away, because I read them and I answer, and I want to know which forgotten method speaks to you. And if you believe, like I do, that this kind of practical knowledge was set aside not because it stopped working, but because someone profited from us forgetting it, then come with me. Subscribe and join the people who are quietly digging all of this back up, one buried method at a time. Because next I am going to show you the forgotten way families used to slash a grocery bill nearly in half, using a single shopping rule from a 1940s government pamphlet. And once you see it, you will never walk into a store the same way again. I'm holding one thing back, and it changes everything. The household account book, kept the way our great-grandparents did. Inside my membership, the Old Ways Almanac, I pick up right where this video stopped. Get stuck? Ask me yourself, I answer you, no robot. Practical folks like you are already in there with me. Just point your phone's camera at the code on your screen. Cancel anytime, one click.